Karim, I go like that.
Okay.
Like that? Okay. Thank you. Thank you. If you allow me, I will, before beginning my speech, I would like to react during 2 minutes from some remarks after what I have heard and seen today. The first thing that I want to say is somebody said, I think it's Fula, no future for Tunisia without women. And we used to say in our network since many years, no future for Europe without women. I think that we can say no future without women. That is for sure. My second remark is following again Rula's presentation. It's a Vietnamese story. You know, during the Vietnam War, we used to see everywhere in the media women with guns on the back, women with in the rice cultivation fields armed, women with a lot of responsibilities in the army, some years after the war, I was in an official trip in Vietnam, and there was a huge amount of people around the table, all the high responsible of the state. And I asked, Monsieur, there is not a single lady here. And you know what they say? They say, the ladies are our best ministers of interior. So I want just to say that, of course, we support resistance against fascism, extremism, and in all its forms. But I have also doubts about this focus. As feminist, I am internationalist, I am also pacifist, and I am fighting for political solutions of conflicts. I want also to make a little comment about the responsibility of the international community, which has been widely defined by Charles. Because in the presentation video that we had, there was Gaza. And I want just to make the remark that the fighter for peace and democracy are those who have left Gaza dying under the bombs. They are the same. These fighters are also the ones who have taken the anti-terrorist flag in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Libya, with the results that all of us know. So I think it is extremely important to mobilize, and in our mobilization to condemn the attitude of this international community. Militarization of the conflicts is creating the disaster that you see. And we know who, sorry for my English, I am not English speaker originally, who create these monsters, Daesh, ISIS, Al-Nusra, who create them. So it is very important to promote our feminist analysis and our political analysis to see who is doing what at the international level. So I come back to my thing, which is to answer to the questions, how to face which challenge the women in the MENA region are facing and how to face them, how to answer them. Nobody will explain to you now the role of the MENA women in the popular protest. It is internationally recognized. So I will not be long on this. But what is absolutely from Vietnam to Algeria, to Iran, to Libya, to Tunisia, to Egypt, what is common to all these countries is that the role that women are taking in for social and political change, their role in keeping the community going during the conflicts never translates into their participation in formal peace processes and decision making under the following transitional period. So why? Of course, these transition political processes are building upon a combination of patriarchal legacy of the societies and on universal patriarchal values, which result, of course, in discrimination against women after conflicts are over and during the transition that follow. Let me describe some challenges. The first challenge that women face for their participation is the structured exclusion of women by traditional concepts of security, peace, and democracy. During the last decade, the dominant discourse has promoted the role of the military as needed to deliver humanitarian assistance and to protect peace. NATO has been portrayed as the support of the peoples who fight dictatorships. In other words, militarism favors violence to protect peace and promotes the role of women in need of protection or liberation. This means in advance to be subordinated and excluded from space of decision making. Military per se is exclusive of women's rights policies, and militarism leads to domination of militaristic values in the culture, identity, and norms of the community, in the civil institutions and state politics, and consequently to strengthening the privileged position of men and the military in decision making, thus to limiting the space and access of women to political influence. The second challenge is connected with gender power structures that keep women in subordinated positions. The exclusion of women for political transition processes is a universal structured pattern of unequal power distribution between women and men. These structures sustain women under representation in the decision-making spheres in peace and is laying the ground for women exclusions from peace negotiation and transition political processes. The third challenge is socio-cultural challenge, connected with the strong gender stereotypical images of women, a so-called feminine identity, womanhood, characterized by a lack of taste, inaptitude to take on power, and inability for tough negotiations. Achieving gender balance in the decision-making sphere requires global changes in public attitudes. The fourth challenge is connected with political and legal issues. The structures of the peace negotiation and transitional processes are political ones, and the political sphere is a male sphere. Male composition, male structure, male functioning, and male history. So, even if women are as little specific as men, they are easily invited to deal only with women questions, women's issues. When women participate in such structures, they are part also of the political formation or side of the conflict, and they defend the interest of this side, as their number is very limited. Even if they are feminists, they cannot reach enough critical mass to impose women's rights and gender equality on the agenda. Besides, all the political parties from the right to the left claim they are supporting women, but they never consider the gender discrimination neither as a priority nor as a full-round political issue when they analyze societies. The fifth challenge is the lack of support and recognition of independent women's rights organizations by the government and institutions on the national and international level. Lack of financial means, lack of space of dialogue between political sphere and women's rights organizations, lack of link between them and the female politicians, increasing attempts of control of women's rights groups and marginalization or instrumentalization of women's rights. Feminist organizing is threatening the dominant order. That's why governments and international institutions tend more and more to create their own civil society or to substitute to the women's rights organizations their own bodies. How to face this challenge and what to do? To debate on women's participation in decision-making processes often leads to the usual questions. Why and what difference would women make? What is the impact of their participation? As feminists, are we asking what difference men make? No. That is to say that we address the issue of women's participation in the decision-making sphere comprehensively as a genuine issue based on social and gender justice and not on efficiency. In other terms, the presence of women is not measurable in terms of impact, but is a measure of democracy. This means that all decision-making processes, among them political transition and peace processes, should be subject to democratization, allowing representation and participation of all concerned. In this regard, there is a persistent gender gap in the planning of both peace and transitional processes that take societies out of conflicts and dictatorships. First, there is an urgent need for planning democratization of transition processes, which means that women's rights are inserted in post-conflict constitution and legislations by combining rights and justice discourse. Feminist fight can't be dissociated from the fight for peace, freedom, and social justice. Women's rights perspective should be shared and adopted by all the components of the democratic movement as the only way to achieve, together women and men, any social transformation towards peace, social justice, inclusive for all. Spaces for dialogue must be created for those concerned, women, feminists, peace activists, organizations, and researchers, to sharpen their strategies through peace, through transparent and inclusive discussions on innovative approaches to security and peace policies, inclusive of women's rights and gender equality. Space where women's rights activists can negotiate with decision makers and political leaders their demands for women's participation. In parallel, immediate steps must be taken on state level towards global demilitarization and ending occupations. Without it, no advancement on any rights can be achieved, as militarism and sacrifice of rights, in particular women's rights, in the name of national security, would remain a dominant speech. As European Feminist Initiative, we support the building of an alternative discourse exposing the connections between patriarchy, military, and religion, and their resistance to gender equality. This discourse promotes gender equality on the top of policy's agenda through the ongoing Euromed campaign Equality First. We approach UNSCR 1325 in a common frame with other women's rights international instruments on the first rank CEDAW. We support and facilitate national development of national action plan for implementations of 1325. We work with researchers to support the building of relevant gender data. In conclusions, I would say that we are staying side by side with Iraqi, Syrian, and Kurdish women's rights and civil rights organizations who demand a political solution, because immediate steps must be taken to ban of all weapons to the ISIS, followed by a ban of weapon sales to the region. Political action and economic sanctions on states that support the jihadist forces or organized trade with them. Prosecution of all perpetrators of war crimes and crimes against humanity in front of an international tribunal. Organize and the need to organize under the auspice of UN an international conference for peace in the Middle East. By supporting this process, the governments will show the real intention and commitment to furthering a democracy in the Euromed region based on respect of women's rights for all, human rights for all, and citizenship for both women and men. But for this, women's rights defenders in the whole region must invest together in common fields of action to debate about the main obstacles that women are facing to have the rights to be present on the political scene, in the decision-making sphere, to go and act freely in the public space with all the rights of full citizenship. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Lilian. I promise to give a brief, very brief translation in Farsi for some of the participants here who understand Swedish but not English. So, لیلیان همونطور که گفت رئیس یورومد ارگانایزیشن هست و کار میکنن تو اون منطقه. بحثش سر دموکراسی و صلح، تمام تاکیدش به دموکراسی و صلح بود و گفتش که تلاششون این هست که توی منطقه یک آخرین نکته‌ای که گفت این که یک کنفرانس بین‌المللی از طرف سازمان ملل سازمان بدن که مسئله شرکت برابر زنان و حقوق شهروندی برابر برای زنان رو اونجا مطرح بکنن و در این حال تلاش دارن میکنن که هر نوع فروش اسلحه به آیسیس داعش رو ممنوع بکنن، هر نوع فروش اسلحه به منطقه رو، و در این حال محاکمه کسانی که مرتکب جنایت علیه بشریت شدن، وار کرایم یا جنایت جنگی شدن. یه نکته اولش گفت که اینا بعدا ما حتما تو بحث بهش میپردازیم، از اونجایی که بحث سر این مطرح شد که مسلح یا غیر مسلح، زنان مسلح بشن یا نشن، این هی اومد و رفت. گفت تو ویتنام ما موقع جنگ تمام مدت عکس زنها رو می‌دیدیم مسلح، در حال کار، در حال کشاورزی، جنگ، همه چی. ولی بعد که جنگ تموم شد توی یه سفر رسمی که لیلیان رفته بود به ویتنام، اونجا میگه تمام دولتی‌ها وایساده بودن، یه دونه زن توشون نبود. پرسیدیم زنها کجان؟ گفتن زنها بهترین وزیر امور داخلن، یعنی تو خونن. و داشت میگفت که لزوما یعنی اسلحه هم نمیتونه چیز بکنه. اینا نکته خیلی خیلی خلاصه صحبت‌های لیلیان بود. بحث اصلیشو باید در نظر بگیریم، مثلا دموکراسی و صلح و از طریق سازمان ملل تلاش برای اینکه بتونن برن جلو. این بعداً تو بحث استراتژی و بحث دیبیتمون اینا نکات مهم میشه. Thank you, and now is Hara's time, and will you come there? So you need the, and you briefly introduce yourself. I'm sorry, I don't have your biography, so you introduce yourself. Yeah, briefly.